Welcome to the AI Frame podcast, a space where we explore how founders, innovators, and investors are navigating the world of artificial intelligence. Each episode brings you thoughtful conversations with people redefining how technology meets strategy, separating what's real from what is noise. I'm Ana Rojo-Taurua, doctor in mathematics, AI consultant and strategist, and your host. So grab a coffee and let's frame the future of AI together. Today's guest is someone who spent the last 15 years leading transformation at scale. I'm joined by Owais Qadeer, founder and Chief AI Strategist at Change Tool AI. He's built and scaled ventures across 25 plus countries, supported CEOs through complex, high-stake decisions, and now sits right at the center of organizational change and AI adoption. So today, we're going to go deep into how AI is reshaping operational models, what leaders are still getting wrong, and how companies can actually transform rather than perform innovation theater. So welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you, Anna. I'm very pleased to be here.
How do you describe yourself? Who are you today? And what are you working on?
I describe myself at the very fundamental level as a problem solver. For your audience, I started out in engineering, and engineering in any discipline is really solving problems by looking at what information you have available and what information gaps there are that you need to fill to be able to solve problems. So that's really what I am in many different roles, even as a leader of a business and either consultant sometimes to clients, an advisor, really trying to solve problems at the very basic level.
There is a line in your LinkedIn profile that I really like, and it says this: you can't fly until you find the courage to lose ground. So how does that philosophy show up in the way you lead, build, and advise organizations?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite lines, and I came across it a number of years ago, and it just, something that immediately strikes a resonation with a very deep part of you. It's all about change. I have functioned in the changing environments pretty much most of my career. And one of the things that I find is one of the biggest resistance to change in people and in groups of people or systems is not letting go of where they are right now, which feels comfortable. It's a human trait. We like what is familiar and we like to stick with it. And we like to tell ourselves that change is good, but, in actions that doesn't follow through. So for me, that's been a key line for me to just hold very close to my heart. You need to let go before you can actually start to discover new areas. And that happens in change and transformation environments often. With leaders, that's also some things they hold close to their heart in the way that they've done things or made decisions. And a lot of technology leaders also find that. I mean, that's the surprising thing that I came across in my career as speaking to a lot of technology leaders. They like to have the same way they approach technology, even if the technology changes, and the way you need to decide about implementing or strategizing around new technology. So that's something that I see repeating often.
There's something that I really like about the flow of these episodes. Someone talks about something in one episode and that gets repeated in the next episode with the next guest not knowing that has been discussed in the previous episode. And just now I was just talking to the previous guest about being comfortable, being a little bit afraid of change. But growth happens when there's change, when things are uncomfortable, when things are a little bit messy. And then is when you actually build and when you're actually progress. What was the moment you realized that AI was not just another tool, but something that would completely redefine operating models? You work with organizational change long before AI became the center of the conversation. So when did you thought, okay, actually AI is something that is going to make a massive impact?
I think this was maybe close to 2 years ago. So we'd been thinking about building a solution for leaders to take decisions quicker long before AI. But as we were finding different interfaces for it and system or mechanism for delivering that solution, we started experimenting with AI. And especially in the last 1 to 2 years, the availability of the tech that has come through and the pace at which it's coming through has enabled us to, one, synthesize and access data, which is important for decision making, much quicker. And secondly, in delivering that data, the different modes in which you can deliver it has also become available much quicker and in a lot of variety, whether that's in a dashboard form, it's in a report form, we call it change assets. Because of the availability of that, almost coming together at the time that our solution was coming to, because our solution wasn't sort of started with, hey, we want to play around with AI and experiment with AI. So let's build something. Oh, it can apply here. So it wasn't so much that as it was, we're building something serious here that the industry needs. And what is the mode in which we can deliver it? And then pop, AI comes in and then we're like, hey, let's that was our journey.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good example of, okay, you have a problem, you have data available, and then you try to find the solution. And then you assess if AI is the right solution for your problem. And for this one, it actually is, which is the natural way of doing things, and not lots of people do that. Like that approach, which now saying it out loud seems like the most reasonable way to do it. Actually, lots of people start with the AI. It's like, okay, I have AI and I want to solve a problem. What is the problem that I want to solve?
I love analogies, and so I'll give you one. Imagine you wanted to travel. Okay, so I'll start with that, and you chose train as the mode you're going to travel. So then now you start to think, okay, where does the train go from my station and how many trains will I need to change? You'll come up with a list of destinations that you can go to via train. But if you said, I want to go to Beijing, or I want to go to Moscow, or I want to go to Cairo, and then you said, what are the different ways in which I can get there? And then you have options of how quickly you can get there, or whether you're going to have a scenic route, how many stops you're going to have there. And I think that's basically translating our journey, is we decided where we wanted to get to. And then we said, okay, what are the options to get there?
I absolutely love that analogy. Let's talk about Change Tools AI. Is the number one AI platform for organizational change. So what was the core problem you saw that made you think a platform like this needed to exist?
I think this is, again, a good question. It allows me to sort of almost tell you about the industry a little bit. We've been doing a lot of transformation in the way I try to stay away from words like change and transformation generally, because, that kind of triggers different thoughts. We've been making great strides on the upstream aspect of organizations where data exists. So how does data exist? Data storage, data security, data governance. And yes, there are still a lot of gaps, but in the way data is actually stored and maybe even at the very upstream level accessed, that we've been making a lot of progress. So, we can store a lot more data now. We don't need to keep it manually. We can have it in, servers and so on, and access them in real time and blah, 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 right? On the downstream, where we have to make decisions or deliver whatever meaning we have created out of this data, we've also made great strides. So we have sexier PowerPoint versions, we have dashboards, we have all these great things. In the middle is where a huge amount of gap exists, which is the actual, from the data to the meaning, which today still happens very manually. It happens, but it happens still very manually compared to the two ends. And that was the area where I had seen a lot of pain in initiatives run in the organization to, improve the profit margin, or deliver better value to customers, or get a product faster to the market. That middle area was where organizations struggled the most to actually take that data and get it to the meaning part. Form of an analogy is that you've got really, really Formula One type speed on the data side in data servers and so on, where you storage information. And then you've got also Formula One like delivery on the front end. but you've literally got mules carrying that data and transforming that into delivery. So this is a problem that we're trying to solve, and it's a huge problem. I know we say we're the number one AI org change platform in the Middle East, but I think this is a global problem we're trying to solve, and we're trying to solve it across industries.
And what is the biggest resistant point you see when organizations are trying to modernize their change processes? Is it cultural? Is it structural? Or it's just that, again, coming back to the term of change, and again, we can talk about that a little bit more, is that simply that the old way of doing things feels safer? What do you think it is?
I rolled the three down as you were saying it because I think it's all three.
Right.
And it's all three to different degrees in different industries. So structural, yes. I mean, there's some industries where a lot of information is still sitting on, spreadsheets and some perhaps even in written records. I was actually involved with an organization in terms of helping them across many different countries to improve their performance of teams. It's very salesy organization. So they do a lot of their sales teams are huge in terms of the size of the organization. They still maintain paper records. I'm talking about organizations that deliver value to tech organizations.
Right.
So they might have a customer which is right at the forefront of technology, but they're still managing and keeping and storing, some for legal reasons and regulatory, and maybe that's another change that needs to happen. But in other aspects too, there were cupboards in the back of the sales office with data from 2004 and 2005. So structural thing is a real a problem and an issue for some industries.
Yeah.
But for other industries, there's change itself, which may be an issue. So if you're talking about financial organizations, very heavily regulated,
yes,
and in the way they do things. So that's another aspect where we need to absolutely make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and so on before we have the final solution. And it's human nature to be, like we said, in order to fly or you won't be able to fly until you lose ground. That's human nature across all industries to not let go of what's familiar to them. But that can be overcome. There are ways to overcome that. We as tech industry stakeholders, wider industry wise, we have many ways in which we can showcase our performance of any tool or platform in a smaller scale before we go wider. All companies do that. But then there are other innovative ways in which we can actually make people more comfortable with change.
And what would be these things? Because the first thing that comes to mind, and again, this is a topic that has appeared in absolutely every single conversation that I had in this podcast, and is trust. So believe in actually, and really have the confidence that that is the right solution. Because if your customers, the people that you're working with, the stakeholders do believe in it, then they will apply it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, so let's break this down into two different areas, right? So there is often organizations that are great at creating strategies for change. Okay, so maybe we have you have a y-axis, which is strategy, and then you have an x-axis, which is operationalizing that strategy, right?
Right.
In the bottom left corner, which is like low on strategy and low on operationalizing, there's going to be a lot of people who don't have a lot of trust in trying new things out. And so maybe they're also bad at creating a strategy to operationalize it. So they're going to achieve very little. And majority of organizations actually do exist in this quadrant.
Sit there, yeah.
The top one, which I just saw a post that 12% of organizations surveyed, I think it was one of the big firms that surveyed leaders in those organizations, are actually seeing those results from AI come through. And I'll tell you, my hunch is there'll be good at strategizing and they'll be good at operationalizing. Because if you just strategize, but you don't operationalize doing the experimentation, you're just going to keep planning and
planning.
planning. Exactly.
It's like the company that keeps on having meetings and follow-up meetings, but they never take action on what I said in the meetings, right?
But there's another interesting quadrant there, Anna. There's another interesting one, which is the one that doesn't do a lot of strategizing, because the leaders are not interested in maybe trying out new things. But they have leaders, I'll put that in quote, within the organization who just take the lead and start operationalizing some AI or new tech, tools and solutions. What happens with those organizations is quite interesting for me, because I actually, when I think about that quadrant, I actually can think of some names of clients that prospects and clients that I know, that they're not necessarily themselves very interested in as a strategy approaching new tech, but their team members are. And so you have pockets across the organization where some great work is happening, and then there are other areas which almost become bottlenecks for the process, because, hey, I've done this really, really quickly and very, very intelligently, but this process then becomes a bottleneck. And so these organizations, until the point where they start to feel the pain of the bottleneck, will not really realize that there are solutions already existing in the organization that just need to be brought up and put across the other areas of the organization. So now we move away from tech and we move away from all of these things, and culture can be spoken about just generally widely as led by leaders. I always say leaders actually define the culture that is then followed across the organization. It's very rare you find that an organization that has a leader that practices a different culture and the organization follows an absolutely different, wonderful champion culture. It really, I mean, I cannot think of one example in my mind, whether I know them directly or indirectly. So if the culture is quite, for lack of a better word, toxic, and it doesn't allow people to really bring ideas to the fore and experiment new things, and actually it taxes people for bringing in new ideas, which is why I describe that toxic. Then what you're going to find is you're going to become stale in terms of your innovation, and you're going to find it very hard to retain the customers that you have. You're going to start losing, and then you're going to, it's a vicious cycle, and then everything gets infected. So culture for me, I think, outside of tech, just in any, I mean, it could be even a sports team, is led by the leaders of the organization. And that's the piece that has to be front of mind for any leader.
We're seeing a lot of change in the AI space. How does successful leadership look like for an AI organization?
Leaders that have a solution in there, either it's a startup or it's a fast-growing organization and it's already established, I think they need to be careful how they use the term AI. I think if you start attaching yourself, because it's the latest buzzword in terms of how people are saying, oh, our solution is AI, so it must be good. I think there's going to be a point where people are going to start to say, or start to realize, at least in any market today, you can still have a tool or a platform that has nothing to do with AI, but it's the right solution.
Exactly. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that.
Here's somebody who's actually leading a company that is delivering an AI solution. So I think you have to be careful. I'll give you an example. When I've worked with organizations to transform their business, whether that's, they're solving a profit problem, they're solving a cultural problem or whatever. And let's say we were specifically looking at a process or a series of process, like end to end, from, you get a request to fulfilling that request. Most organizations, they look at that and they say, oh, okay, process A, B, and C, we need a really sexy tool, technology tool that will sort that problem out. And what they often end up doing is they end up digitalizing the manual processes. So the steps remain the same.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll get incremental gains, like, 5 to 6, under 10%. And they'll say, oh, pat ourselves on the back. We've digitally transformed our organization, right? But sometimes what we have found, working with large organizations especially, you can actually look at a process and require no digital intervention, meaning you don't need to update your legacy system or whatever, but you're just changing the steps in the process, meaning there are multiple
Right.
approval layers that don't need to exist. Simpler requests that need to be served can be done quickly with pre-approvals and things like that. You can drastically change and transform the outcome to a client without any digital tool being introduced. And so
That's
I'm not saying
interesting.
that will suit every transformation requirement.
Yeah.
But in some, that's all you need. You just need to look at the steps.
Yeah, that's so powerful because I think there's a misconception now that AI is going to solve all your problems. And now, especially with agentic AI, it feels like everything needs to be agentic, everything needs to be automated, and that is the solution. When sometimes a solution doesn't work or a strategy doesn't work because the architecture is wrong, right? The steps that have been put in place are not the right ones. So it's more like at the foundational level, not as a algorithmic technological level, not like a strategy level, that things are not right. Then you fix that, right? What is the outcome? What are the benefits that we are getting from changing this base, this foundation level? Right now, is there anything that needs to that we see there's going to be a benefit by automation? Yes. Does it need to be done by AI? Because that's another thing. I think there's another misconception. Every single type of automation is AI. And no, it's absolutely not like that. So we come back to what we were discussing before, right? It's about deciding if AI is actually the right solution, because we are using AI for kind of like an umbrella term that now can mean anything. And we're kind of like overusing the term AI that I think is going to reach a moment in where AI doesn't mean anything apart from a marketing badge.
I truly agree. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think that makes me think about another point, which is that in all of that confusion and noise, I think what's also important to differentiate is where AI actually shines the brightest.
Yeah.
We have to really identify where there are cases that AI can't help us. It's actually a different kind of problem that needs to be addressed. Okay. And then there are cases where you have automation, but not AI. I mean, people who know that automation is not equal to AI, right? And then there's a wider area where there's, maybe financial due diligence, which is actually a problem that needs to be addressed rather than introducing AI into the picture. And then the last part, which is, no, this absolutely requires an AI solution. And here's why.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I don't know whether that needs to happen at regulatory levels, but I think that definitely needs to happen. And I think all leaders can do that themselves. They can actually educate and make their leadership teams more aware of how to understand that.
That is the key thing for me. Education. If you're going to implement a solution as a leader, you must have a justification for that implementation, and you cannot justify it successfully if you don't have the correct knowledge and if you don't have the clarity to be able to explain why that is the correct solution. What is next for you? So what are you excited about building or exploring next that you haven't talked about and that you can tell in this episode?
There's a few things. So the way I like to keep myself on my toes, but also keep thinking. I often say this to my teams, but also when I'm speaking to client teams, is that every individual and every system, so a group of individuals too, should have a duality. You've got to operationally deliver whatever is your mandate and target and so on, and get to that. But you need to ensure you've got areas where you are innovating and finding new ways of doing that delivery, that essential part. And what happens if you have only one of them? If you have only operational, I think over a period of time, and we have plenty of studies to look at. Over a period of time, your operational performance goes down because you're only operating and delivering. So you're not getting time to think, to just pause. And think can be anything from, hey, we're doing a brainstorm as a team to say, what new ideas can we come up with to deliver this? Or what new service can we deliver with the same building blocks that we have? And if you only have the thinking one, there's nothing you're delivering.
Exactly.
You're just theorizing and you're not really experimenting and thinking. And so what I find is, even when I start to think about, what's coming next and so on, I always like to keep myself busy with that 20%, 10% time where I'm experimenting and innovating and thinking with my teams to say, hey, this is great. And maybe this might be the cutting edge of industry right now, but can we beat that? Can we do it in a slightly different way? Can we try and deliver it in a way that nobody expects?
Yeah.
And so that's what keeps me interested, because sometimes you get this blinkers on where, because you're delivering a solution a certain way, after a while, your solution doesn't seem so, novel or cutting edge anymore to you, at least. Maybe in the industry, it's perceived the same.
I think especially with the area of AI, that everything is changing so fast, you need to evolve. If you want to keep on being successful, if you want your solution to keep having a positive impact, I think it's imperative that you keep evolving. And there is no evolution, there is no progress if there is no research, and if it's no being a little bit ambitious, really, and being confident that you can come up with something that is going to be new, and then you implement that, and then you adapt. And I think that is the way to really move forward and being successful, especially in everything, really, but especially in the AI space, with everything moving so fast. And not only that, is what you were saying, right? So addressing what is real, what is noise, and also making sure that you stick to that philosophy for both sides, for the operational side of things, but also for the more innovative research side of things. So to make sure that you're always clear on what you're doing and what you're implementing is actually something meaningful.
Couldn't agree more.
I think we're going to leave it here. Thank you so much for coming to this episode and sharing all of these insights with us. I think we've learned a lot about what change looks like in the AI space. It has been a pleasure to have you in the podcast.
No, it's a pleasure to join the podcast. For all those who are watching, subscribe.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the AI Frame podcast. If you like this episode, follow the show and share with someone who would love it too. I'm Ana Rojo Turua, and I'll see you next time for another conversation that reframes how we think about AI.